to put it in your purple pill, but it's not open. He posted a
Yeah,
pic.
the purple pill. You have to go back through Dana's main page, and then you have to click on the comment section and put it on the main page.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Oh, what's the purple pill? Oh, the little thing at
The
the bottom, the
comments.
comment
Yeah,
section. Okay. Um,
you don't have it up tonight
I don't know
for
what
however
happened to
you're
Sage.
connecting.
There she go. Lamar. I always say Lamar. Is it Lamari?
It's Lamar, ma'am.
Lamar.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
What's up, Lamar? Good to see you, man.
What's going on, Peter? Good to see you as well.
So, did you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah. I will say I lean towards pessimist. It's just because the vast majority of my career has been delivering bad news to senior decision makers when I worked in the government, and I think we are headed towards some form of race war, but I don't think in the way that most people would conceptualize it. I think a lot of people think it's going to be like this odd conventional forces, white versus black across the nation. And when I talk to my friends that work in the Department of Homeland Security, that's not how they see it. What they're saying is, if something like that does happen, it'll be more akin to what the U.S. Army and the Asymmetric Warfare Group assessed years ago, and that was you have these isolated skirmishes that are racially driven, and that it would get ugly. But they would basically induce racially racially charged protests. So you'd have these things happening in your major urban population centers, especially on the West Coast. You see organizations like Antifa pop up and be basically a fly in the ointment. And for the vast majority of people that live out in the sticks, I mean, you'd be watching it on news and maybe social media. But the big trouble is going to be in the big cities.
So, you do
So,
think something is coming?
I do. There's something that we would do when I worked in government called indications and warning, and it's a framework that you use to help decision makers anticipate when something bad is coming. I worked Russia the vast majority of my career, so we had one for Russia, we have them for China, Iran, North Korea, whatever. But domestically, we also have them for widespread civil unrest and violence. And when you look at the indicators that are happening on social media, you basically have the information silos where pro groups, either white or black, are basically increasingly divided, and the conversation in each of those silos is increasingly violent. Calls for violence, plans for violence, um, support for violent acts that are happening even outside of their groups, to the point to where it becomes a powder keg, and all you need is the right catalyst to light this thing off. Now, I don't know what that catalyst would be, but all the tea leaves indicate that both camps are basically posturing themselves to react to whatever that is, and then it just happens really quick.
and so Lamar, just to follow up with that. So if it's not traditional, and there's something is going to happen, uh, what do you what could you foresee happening as far as the breakdown of civil order and then the racial breakdown further from there? Is it? I mean, we've discussed before the power going out and not being able to access clean water and essential services that many people need every single day or week, whether it be medication or doctors and hospital visits that keep them alive. Would that be a type of event that would then kick off a further groups of marauders going and trying to kick off a physical war?
Yeah, so the term that's being used within the government right now is called accelerationists. They seem to be more prevalent on the 1488 pro-white nationalist side of the house, but there are pro-black groups that think this as well. And that is, in the event that the flare goes up, you have these camps going back and forth in cities across the United States of America. A subset of those groups would start going after power substations. They'd start disrupting rail lines. They'd start going after food distribution centers, basically to light the fuse so that the rest of the country feels the same degree of pain. Now, on the 1488 side, it's oddly attached to this idea that to course correct the direction of the United States, you have to burn everything down. You have to destroy the government, get rid of the elected officials, and install your own people that are going to espouse your own values, which is crazy because I don't necessarily understand how they would then control the infrastructure to repair everything, but that's their ideas. But yeah, it's like once the dominoes start to fall, you start seeing attacks against critical infrastructure. But the vast majority of the media attention would be on those skirmishes that we would see places like Atlanta, New York, Chicago, Seattle, LA, places like that.
And then this basically chaos is chaos out of order, right? Problem, reaction, solution, whereby the government then gets the opportunity to step in and say, listen, we need to quell all this. We have to go back to the way things were, semblance of normalcy. So we're going to have to do things that will limit your civil rights and your constitutional rights in the name of safety and security, right?
Correct. And this is where I will be a little bit careful, but I did hear from a buddy of mine within the last 6 months, especially after POTUS was in office. His team directed a review of Presidential Directive 51. I don't want to dominate the space, but I'd say if you have time to go look at that, it's basically presidential authorities in a national emergency that evolved from the 80s when Ronald Reagan was in office, and there was a directive called Rex 84, and it basically said that during a time of emergency, the executive office absorbs essentially all the powers of the other three branches of government. And whatever is required to be done to bring order back to the country is within the bailiwick of the president.
Wow.
Yep.
I
Appreciate it, Lamar.
yeah, I appreciate that, and I always love when he comes up. It's like kind of levels the playing with what's going on that we don't see and what's possibly be coming down the pipeline. So here's a question on that I'm swing this way me. What should people do? Is it something that people can do to prevent that from happening, or just change the narrative? Or is
I,
it
I,
something that's once started, it's nothing that anyone could do?
yeah, so the best way to inoculate yourself from it, I think conversations like this and understanding what you're looking at. I personally am of the impression that you have some of these arsonists that are operating on platforms like X and other social media platforms that are kind of planting the seeds to suggest, well, maybe violence is required. Maybe it's okay if we do start doing certain things. And in my personal experience as a counterintelligence officer, as soon as I hear someone speak like that, I automatically assume you're a federal agent because I used to do the same thing on the counterintelligence side to catch potential spies that would go give secrets to Russia. So when I hear people, I'm not saying that all the people that are talking like that are federal assets. I mean, I think there's just a bunch of stupid people that think that they want a war that they don't. Um, but I think when you start seeing the volume on that type of stuff increase, and social media platforms and law enforcement don't seem to be taking any actions to go after those people that are basically providing calls to violence, that would be a big signal to me. But I'd say keep your circle close, be able to weather a couple bad days. Like in my house and all my friend circle, we're all prepared to weather a bad day or weeks or months. Having some storable food and water, having some redundant communications, ham radio, stuff like that. And none of this stuff is super expensive. So please don't think that I'm telling people to go break the bank to get themselves ready. It's just being smart. I would be prepared for this as much as I would be prepared for a really bad snow day or storm that would come through and knock the power out. But the reality is, as we would say in the Army, they're prepared or rarely surprised. And I think if you're paying attention to the information space, you're hearing these things, and something's making the hairs on the back of your neck stand up like, hey, this is off. Why is no one doing anything about this? But I hate to say it, I think it'll be slow at first and then all of a sudden. And I apologize for that not being the best answer, Dave Dennis.
No, one more thing. Under the Trump administration, or maybe the administration that comes after him?
Um, So what I've currently heard is that it's not necessarily even dependent on the administration, but there's an anticipation for this summer to get stupid. We're already seeing indications that Antifa's ramping up. I posted something about this a couple days ago when they were doing stuff. I think it was Washington State University, but when I spoke to my buddy at DHS about it, what he said was strange is it's very obvious that they're doing something called probing. And that is, if you want to determine how the security services of a certain country will respond, you start doing small things. You time how long it takes them to respond, what force they respond with, how many people show up, all that kind of thing. So when you actually do initiate what you're trying to do, you have planned for well more than the security forces of accounted for.
Kash Patel, he was at a congressional hearing today, and he was basically saying that yes, they do need more money, to combat, basically, to protect the nation, from foreign entities, terrorists, border and stuff like that. So, and would you say like what he is doing, what he's trying to do is, really trying to prevent what you just laid out. I don't even know what to call it, basically. But when you have Congress people, especially Democrats, I said this earlier in the space about an hour ago that, is a race war coming, or we headed towards a race war? That's the Democrats' main play card. And they play it so well that people don't even know that they'll be manipulated into that. So he's at a congressional hearing. I'm like, well, why is he at a congressional hearing already? He was just, confirmed in, and he has to explain what he's trying to do, and the people that are pushing back so hard are the Democrats. He's not doing anything wrong. So is that an indicator? Because that would be an indicator for me, and I do believe Democrats have a hand in this type of catastrophic, potential catastrophic thing that could happen in society.
100%. So what Kash Patel is doing, I worked very closely with Washington Field Office when I worked at DIA, and they're trying to pre-position forces to be able to quickly respond to to sadly what has the real potential to happen this summer and the next few months moving into the fall. The problem is this, Dana, and I'll try to put this in a different way. Imagine you have one fire extinguisher for your home, and you have a fire in your kitchen. You use the fire extinguisher to put out the fire, but then something sparks off in your basement, and then you go to turn on the water to get a bucket of water, and the water doesn't work. So, in other words, you would have this domestic issue you're trying to address that would eat up the vast majority of your personnel time. In the military, we call it ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. But then you have also the potential that we have adversaries that are looking to exploit that situation. And this is where it goes back to, and I can say this because it's all out and it's declassified. You'd essentially have plainclothes covert teams, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, whatever bad actors out there, running around causing massive trouble to our critical infrastructure. And while the FBI and DHS and the marshals are trying to stop these massive civil unrest incidents and armed skirmishes, you have this other stuff going on. So basically, as President Trump would say, we don't have the cards, to put it bluntly.
And Lamar, we had that. I know you spoke about it before. The same type of agents were on the ground during the George Floyd Summer of Love,
They
correct?
were. So when I worked at Quantico, I worked with a team at Washington Field Office. They were tracking Russian GRU officers in Ferguson, Missouri, during all the crazy. They were also tracking them during pro-abortion rallies, pro-2A rallies. So what's important to understand is, yes, we have our own in-house issues, but our adversaries don't really care what those fissures are. They're just trying to pour gasoline on the fire. So anything at all where we just refuse to address these problems that have persisted for a long time, and they have merit, and I think it's probably going to take a while and some tough conversations for us to address them. Our adversaries are essentially waiting to pounce.
You are a pessimist, Lamar, but I appreciate your pessimism.
Just a realist, ma'am. But thank you for your
Yes,
for the
yes,
thumbs up.
that's the perfect word, right? If you are a realist, and it's like people in, you know, but it's kind of, you know, this is the time that we're living in. One last thing, and then I'm definitely gonna go to Sway Me and Immortal. Why are they doing this? Is it that shadow government that wants to control America?
Just a real quick clarification. When you say they, who are you
I
referring?
don't know who the day is. So the day is the question mark of the shadow government that people say we have. Not
Dana, would you say they is the same people who did 9/11 potentially, that then
yes.
initiated the Patriot Act, that then allowed
Right, but
FinCEN
I
to look
think
up
they're
everybody's rear
right, and
end?
a lot of those people are not sitting in the White House of Congress like they're above them or control them. That
Yeah, so I mean, this is where it starts to
is
sound conspiratorial, and I don't want to spend too much time, but I can provide people things to read. There's been a long term plan within the United States of America, and people like Zbigniew Brzezinski and Henry Kissinger have openly written about it and spoken about it in lectures and books and white papers, where the U.S. Constitution serves as an obstacle to what they say, not me, what they say is an effort to usher in what they call global governance or one world order or one world government. These are not my words; those are their words. Um, and the problem is the United States of America is essentially the last place on earth where we actually have civil liberties to the degree that we still do. We still have the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. And for governments that want to control not only what you say and limit your ability to defend yourself, but the next big thing is to be able to do what we're seeing in Europe. Essentially, you post something the government doesn't like on social media, you're going to jail. You go pray silently outside of an abortion clinic, regardless of what you think of that action, you go to jail. And that's essentially thought crime. So for decades, they've said that there are certain catalysts that need to happen to move us towards that in that direction. To Peter's point, most people don't know that the Patriot Act was actually written before 9/11 happened. And there was a document written from the Council for a New American Century in September 2000 that said that a catastrophic catalyst was required domestically to forward the U.S. Defense posture. And in that document, it said the United States needs a new Pearl Harbor for us to usher these things in. And it was later after 9/11, George Bush actually used that exact language to frame it. So, for as crazy as that may sound, I think the they there are not people who really give a crap about the United States or any nation at all, because the way they view the world is borderless. And they believe that it should be managed from some other place, and that voting should be eliminating. Klaus Schwab said that not too long ago, that in the future we won't need people to vote because we need. Um, and as Euro Harari said, the vast majority of us, to include people that work like for the government like me, are useless eaters that they need to find a solution to deal with.
And Dana, I've actually had conversations with John Reed Stark, who was the former head of internet crime enforcement for the SEC, and he's pretty active on here, and he holds spaces every now and again. And I've gone up and spoke to him about these things, and he said exactly what Lamar said. They had the plan ready to go. They just needed to have the appropriate crisis to be able to institute the Patriot Act. And he said, you know, something to the effect of, they were like, listen, let's get everything through. This is a moment we can get everything through we ever wanted. So write up whatever you can that has been a thorn in our side to be able to prosecute people for the last couple of decades, and let's let it sail through because of this event. And that's exactly what happened.
damn. I really appreciate everything you said, Lamar. I was writing down notes, so and I'm gonna definitely do my research. Sway Me then Immortal.
Yeah, okay. So I posted Ink said he'll attempt to come in, but I posted what he just posted about these are flyers he said all around Memphis. So that's in the Jumbotron. I wanted to ask Lamar, What are some of the names of, you could rattle off the white supremacist group or the 1488? Do you know of any of the black extremist groups? Because I don't know of any, to be honest
So,
with you.
so it's interesting how it's working on more of the black, I guess, the black side of this, because they are loosely associated with organizations that most people know of, Pan-Africanist movements. There was even a group out of New York. I want to say they were affiliated with ISPK or something, that they called them Hebrew Israelites. There was a group connected
Yep.
to them loosely.
Lamar, we had one earlier. He was in the space in Isaiah Washington space earlier.
Oh,
Yep.
oh, okay.
But
So
they're already on the black extremist list. I'm looking for because they did kill one of the Hebrew Israelites, killed Dr. Martin Luther King's mother, right? So they've been on the black extremist list group.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. So what
I'm any new ones? That's what I want to know.
not that I'm aware of. So what I've
Okay.
heard is that the bad actors, the ones that are the arsonists, they want to set something off. They're looking for a reason to go kill Whitey, and what they're saying in their chat spaces and communications, they nest themselves next to already established organizations. So in doing that, they're able to hide in the noise, as we would say in the government. If you create something new, your signature's too loud. So if I were still in government, there was a targeting framework that we would use associated with Joint Special Operations Command. You can look this up. It's not classified. It's called F3EA. Find, fix, finish, exploit, analyze. And when something new pops up in an ecosphere, it's really easy to identify it. You do a network analysis, you know who the leader is, you know the funding, you know where they meet, all that kind of stuff. We know all of it. But if you're nested close to something that already exists, it makes it harder to find you. Not impossible, but just a little more difficult.
Okay, so then I'm going to go to, I want to highlight something, and we already know this in our Black American Negro Freeman community. We have immigrants that have worked with Homeland Security that now come over, or they work for the CIA, FBI. They'll change their names. They come from African countries. And you all know one that is out here on this internet 24/7 talking crazy about Black Americans, and then
Talking about Myron Gaines,
yes,
right?
sir. He's a Amaru foodie or whatever. He worked with the special agent in Homeland Security, and now he's out here on the internet. He is definitely one of those attempting to an imposter, as a freedman, stroking the flames, and then literally will say things about us, and now want to claim African American. And so this is what we're seeing in our community and how they're moving. And then even for one of my activist friends that an African literally decided to reach out to some mob guys in Chicago to try to put a hit on him. So I mean, this is what, it's not the Black American, it's the immigrants. I'm gonna put that out there. It's not the freedmen, what I'm saying. And so when you say someone is nesting to an organization, I can see how that can happen, because with the Pan-Africans, they are definitely attempting to infiltrate into the freedmen communities and say that we are joined with these people and these individuals. So I thank you for highlighting the Pan-Africans. I land.
I, I think sway me as well. Like we see a lot of agent provocateurs, right? Individuals who are there to try to kick something off, and they work for different agencies, like Lamar said, right? And the purpose or goal of this is to, one, they're going to say, well, we need to flesh out some of the people who would have a propensity to do this, right? And potentially be able to get rid of them. But also, it's the ultimate goal of locking everybody down, right, in a 15-minute city, which is something else you guys should check out. They don't want you to have the ability to travel. They want a certain select group of people to have access to things, and you could stay at home and you could watch it with your Google glasses.
And you're
It's
speaking
what, you
about the
know,
globalist, right? The
correct,
globalist. Okay.
correct. And
Yeah, and
these
just
in,
really
okay,
one
Lamar.
quick thing, if I could dovetail on what Peter said. So, I have friends that still do this on the counterterrorism side at National Counterterrorism Center, and there are signatures. So I would say this. Here's how we would do this in government. We would identify questionable organizations or groups on social media, whatever the platform, Facebook, X, Gab, Parler, anything. And we would find the people that were having some conversations that played a little bit close to the sun. And we would basically, what we would say, BOLO, BOLO, be on lookout for anyone who was who appeared to have a certain criterion. We call it motivation, capability, and intent. So people just running their mouth, or just people just running their mouth. But then you cross the threshold into suggesting violence. But then when you start to highlight the motivation for that violence, we pay particular attention to those people. One of two things happens at this point. We either target that person for asset recruitment, so that we have eyes and ears now in that organization or in that circle of people talking like that, or, and this is the less savory part, we do what the FBI has done for decades, and that is you create a Frankenstein monster, turn them loose, and then arrest them. And if you don't understand what I'm talking, the Gretchen Whitmer case, where you had a bunch of confidential informants in that, um, you have to do your own reading. Timothy McVeigh, where he had a whole lot of connections with the U.S. government. I mean, we've done this over and over and over. And unless people are really paying attention, you don't necessarily even know that you're looking at a federal asset we would call a false flag operation, and that is something that's done under the identity of an organization, but it's actually us. And then on the backs of that, you start seeing legislation passed through. And the last thing here, Dane, I wanted to read to you, since you're taking notes. There's a book by Zbigniew Brzezinski, and I want everyone to understand he wrote this book in 1976, if you can still hear me. And it's called Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. And it says this is just one quote. The Technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite, unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date, complete files containing the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. And I will tell you, when I left government in 2021, we're damn near there.
What's the name of that book? Between Two Agents?
Yes, America's
Between
role
Two
in the
Ages.
Yeah. Between Two Ages.
Yep. America's role in the Technotronic era.
They have it on Amazon,
Yeah.
Dana. They have it on Amazon. I'm looking at it now.
Okay, yeah. I just Googled it. I have it right here. Okay.
Dana with the data. Dana with the data.